He assumed she was just the janitor. She figured he'd forget her the second the match ended. But after being outplayed in front of Vancouver's elite, Logan Wells, the billionaire's son and chess golden boy, couldn't stop thinking about her. Who was Zara Quinn? And how had she dismantled him like she could see straight through his mind? What started as a stunning loss became something else entirely. An obsession. A search. A connection neither of them had expected. But here's the real twist. This wasn't just about chess. It was about everything he never realized was missing from his life. Stay with it. Because the final move? It changes everything. It was a crisp Thursday evening in Vancouver, and the Silver Crown Chess Society flickered like a temple of intellect. Behind stained glass arches, the room hummed with soft jazz and the scent of cedarwood and aged whiskey. This wasn't the kind of place you wandered into. It was a sanctuary for the brilliant, the privileged, the quietly ruthless. Membership was invitation only. Conversation slipped between English and Latin. And chess? It was sacred. Judges, professors, startup moguls, they all gathered here. But above them all stood one name. Logan Wells. At 29, Nathan was more than just an 8-time club champion. He was the son of tech billionaire Gregory Wells, and Caltech prodigy, a man people whispered about, but never challenged. With his perfectly parted hair, tailored navy suit, and a watch worth more than the average member's salary, Nathan moved like royalty. And he played like a machine. His matches were clinical, quick, brutal, efficient. Opponents entered with confidence and left questioning their place in the universe. That night, he just crushed a corporate attorney in 22 moves. The room buzzed with admiration until the front doors groaned open. Everyone turned. Across the polished marble floor rolled a battered janitor's cart. And behind it, Zara Quinn. Her uniform was worn. Her sneakers scuffed. Strands of brown hair had slipped from a loose ponytail. She looked tired, not messy, just real. She didn't belong there. And she knew it. She wasn't supposed to clean until after midnight. But there she was, calm, quiet, moving past the front desk, past the murmurs and raised eyebrows. Until she stopped, right in front of Nathan's board. He looked up from his glass of bourbon, one eyebrow arched. Are you lost? Leona, the club's receptionist, snapped, her tone sharp enough to slice through the silence. Emily didn't respond. She just kept her gaze locked on the chessboard. Her eyes moved slowly over the pieces, not like someone trying to figure them out, but like someone remembering a language she'd once spoken fluently. Nathan leaned back in his leather chair, intrigued. You play? He asked, loud enough for half the room to hear. Emily blinked, once, unbothered. I used to, she said softly. A few smirks and quiet laughs echoed from nearby tables. Nathan grinned. Care for a match? Just for fun. She glanced at her watch. I've got 20 minutes before the floors are dry. The laughter swelled. Nathan gestured to the empty seat across from him. Well then, let's see what you've got. Emily sat down, not awkwardly, not timidly, but with the calm focus of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. She reset the board without hesitation, her fingers moving with practiced confidence, like they had done this thousands of times before. Nathan pushed the white pieces toward her. She shook her head. Black's fine. He raised an eyebrow. Bold choice. They began. At first, Nathan toyed with her, deploying old traps, falling into the rhythm he knew by heart. The same rhythm that had crushed dozens before her. But by the fifth move, something shifted. She wasn't reacting, she was predicting. Every move she made didn't just block him, it redirected him. His tempo unraveled. His strategy fell apart. She wasn't guessing. She was remembering. As if she'd played this exact match before. In her head, years ago. By the 10th move, sweat clung to Nathan's neck. By the 15th, the room had gone quiet. By the 26th, his king had nowhere left to run. Checkmate. Nathan stared at the board. The pieces blurred. He hadn't just lost. He'd been dismantled. By the janitor. Emily stood, calm as ever. She began resetting the board, as if nothing unusual had happened. Thanks for the game, Mr. Carter, she said, her voice level. I should get back to work. And just like that, she turned. Pushed her battered cart down the gleaming corridor. And disappeared into the dark. No one spoke. Nathan didn't move. His mind was racing. That wasn't luck. That was skill. Mastery. But she wasn't listed in any chess databases. She wasn't a club member. She wasn't even supposed to be in the room. Who the hell was that? Someone whispered. Nathan didn't answer. He walked slowly to the bar, poured himself another drink. His hand trembled. It wasn't just that he lost. It was the way she beat him. Cold. Clean. Quiet. No theatrics. Just a girl in bleach-stained sleeves, who played as if she could see 5 moves into his mind. He pulled out his phone and searched her name. Nothing. No tournament records. No social media tied to chess. No trace. Just silence. And the echo of a game he couldn't forget. She had vanished. No phone number. No last name anyone recognized. No trace. But one thing was certain, Nathan had to find her again. Not just to redeem himself over a chessboard, but because something about her, something behind those steady, unreadable eyes, had shaken him. And for the first time in years, Logan Wells felt like he was the one being studied. He woke the next morning with a pounding in his skull, not from the bourbon, but from the weight of the loss. By noon, he was hunched over his laptop, scanning tournament records from the last decade. Nothing. No Zara Quinn in British Columbia chess. No rating in the Canadian Chess Alliance. Not even a whisper in college club rankings or old scholastic archives. It was like she didn't exist, or like she had erased herself on purpose. The more he searched, the stranger it felt, as if she had deliberately buried her past, sealed her identity in silence. Nathan told himself it was about pride, about restoring his name. But deep down, he knew better. Every time he remembered the way her eyes focused, calm, calculating, he felt something messier than shame, curiosity, and it burned hotter than any humiliation. 3 evenings later, Mount Pleasant was slick with rain. A cold drizzle swept through the narrow streets, painting the brick sidewalks black. Nathan sat alone in the club library, surrounded by old chess manuals and faded opening theories. But every page reminded him of her, of the one opponent no textbook could prepare him for. At 9 p.m., he snapped the laptop shut, grabbed his coat, and stepped out. No umbrella, no destination. He drifted through Vancouver Common, the wind tugging at his collar, the rain soaking through his sleeves. And then, near Kingsway Avenue, he heard it. A soft, familiar sound, the gentle clack of wooden chess pieces. He followed the noise to a shallow stone alcove, a place where 2 homeless men often took shelter. But tonight, a small crowd had gathered under the archway. Nathan stepped closer. There she was, Emily. No uniform, just a faded green jacket, far too thin for the weather. She sat cross-legged on a milk crate, locked in a quiet game. Across from her sat an older man with a silver beard and unsteady hands. Their board rested on an upside-down bucket. The pieces were chipped and mismatched, but Emily treated them as if they were carved from ivory. She spoke gently, showing the man how his pawn move had opened up a fatal diagonal, then offered an alternative. He nodded slowly, thankful, not just for her advice, but for her presence. Nathan watched in silence. She wasn't there to win. She was there to help him survive. Rain dripped from Nathan's cuffs as he finally stepped forward. He meant to say something rehearsed. But the veteran looked up first, grinned. "You're the rich kid," he said. Emily didn't even turn. "Figured you'd show up," she said calmly, eyes still on the board. Her voice was neither surprised nor impressed, just steady. And Nathan knew. He'd just entered a new game. The small crowd chuckled, good-natured, not mocking. Nathan managed a faint smile. Emily finally looked up, surprised to see him, maybe, but entirely unfazed. 20 minutes isn't a lifetime, she said, echoing their first encounter. The veteran stood up, quietly offering his seat. Nathan slid onto the opposite side of the makeshift board, settling onto a cracked park bench beneath the leaking arch. No one in that alley knew who he was. Not really. Not the club champion. Not the billionaire's son. Just another guy with rain in his hair and something to prove. He opened with a hypermodern setup, aggressive, sharp. Emily countered with silence. She calmly guided the game into still waters, traded queens early, defused any fireworks before they could ignite. There were no flashy plays, no tactical explosions. Just clean lines and clarity. With no chaos to hide behind, Nathan felt exposed. After 40 deliberate moves, he offered a draw. She accepted without gloating. No smug looks. No triumphant smiles. Just quiet hands resetting the board. They played again. And again. By the 3rd game, the rain had faded to mist, and the last of the crowd had drifted away. Only the street lamps remained, tall and silent. Emily packed up the board, tucked it under her arm, and gave the veteran a gentle nod before heading toward Mainview Lane. Nathan walked beside her, wordless at first, listening to the sound of wet sneakers and distant traffic. Finally, she broke the silence. "You're soaked." "I was reading about you," Nathan said, then quickly corrected himself. "Trying to, anyway." "You won't find much," she replied with a shrug. "Why?" "I left the circuit at 15. My mom got sick. Hospitals don't cover dreams. So you just quit." "If I'd kept flying to tournaments, my little sister would have ended up in foster care." Wasn't a hard decision. She said it like she was explaining the bus schedule, practical, emotionless, resolved. They stopped outside a narrow doorway with a worn brass plate, Mapleview Residences. Emily keyed in a code. "I coach at a community center on Saturdays," she said. "If you want a rematch, come there." "Not the club." The door buzzed. She slipped inside, and Nathan stood there, raincoat clinging to his back, feeling smaller than he had since boyhood. The next morning, he canceled 2 investor meetings and made his way to the Mapleview Residences office. A social worker confirmed Emily volunteered twice a week, teaching chess to local kids, unpaid. He offered a generous donation. They thanked him politely and gave nothing else. As he turned to leave, a bulletin board caught his eye. A flyer. Saturday Youth Chess, Coach Emily. An address scrawled in marker. An old rec hall in East Hastings. a neighborhood his driver normally sped past without slowing down. Saturday arrived under a bright October sky. Nathan parked his sleek Tesla beside a cracked basketball court and carried his polished tournament set into the gym. The smell hit him first: chalk dust, floor wax, and old benches. Folding tables lined the wall, each topped with a worn-out board and mismatched plastic pieces. Kids between 7 and 13 bounced in their seats as Emily sketched tactics on a whiteboard. Her eyes lit up when the smallest girl in the room solved a tough puzzle before anyone else. Emily clapped, genuinely delighted. The room glowed with her energy. Nathan waited patiently as the session ended. Parents filtered in, thanking her, ushering their children out. Eventually, it was just the two of them. She wiped the board clean. "You came. You beat me once. Drew twice," he said. "I need data. Games to study your style." Nathan unfolded his wooden tournament board on the table. "Best of 5, he asked. They played until the custodian dimmed the gym lights. Emily won 2. Nathan managed 2 draws and a single narrow win. But the numbers didn't matter. What mattered was the space between each move. The quiet glances when their fingers nearly touched the same piece. The soft laugh she gave when he tried a reckless pawn break just to see if she'd roll her eyes. At 8:45 p.m., the custodian locked up with a nod. Nathan offered her a ride home. She declined, but let him walk her to the bus stop. While they waited, a sudden gust of wind tugged at her jacket collar. Without thinking, Nathan slipped off his wool coat and draped it over her shoulders. For a second, she looked like she might give it back. Then she held it tighter. "You'll freeze," she murmured. "I'll survive," he said, then hesitated. "Why East Hastings? You could coach anywhere." She glanced at him sideways. "Because kids here don't get many second chances. Someone gave me one once." The bus pulled up with a low rumble. She slid out of the coat, folded it with care, and pressed it into his hands. Then she stepped aboard. The doors hissed closed. Through the fogged window, she gave him a small wave and vanished into the night again. Nathan didn't sleep. He lay awake replaying every word, every smile, every game. He kept seeing the way her fingers lingered on the rook before sacrificing it. Bold, deliberate, selfless. By morning, he was on the phone with his father's philanthropic director. He arranged a grant to renovate the East Hastings Rec Hall and made one thing clear: the donation had to stay anonymous. Because if Emily suspected it was charity, she might walk away. A week later, Black Oak hosted its prestigious annual invitational. Normally, Nathan carved through the bracket like a scalpel. But this time, he fell in the semifinals to a Latvian grandmaster. The audience gasped. He barely noticed. While applause thundered, Nathan sat in the corner of the hall, rewriting a message for the 10th time. Coffee. No chess clocks. Just conversation. He deleted it. Typed again. Then hit send before he lost his nerve. Her reply came exactly 1 hour later. Tomorrow, 9:30 a.m. Driftwood Roasters, Burnaby. If you're late, I leave. He wasn't late. They sat across from each other at a sunlit table inside Driftwood Roasters, sipping burnt espresso and avoiding the subject they both knew best, chess. Instead, they talked about everything else. Her mother's dialysis schedule. His guilt over money he never had to earn. Her dream of studying data science once her little sister finished high school. His quiet fear that, without chess, he didn't know who he really was. Time melted between their words. At 2:15 p.m., Nathan glanced at his watch. "I've got a meeting this afternoon," he said. "But before I go, I want to help." He braced himself for the wall he expected. "A real coaching position," he added. "Salary. Benefits. I know people at the Vancouver Youth Initiative." Emily studied him, carefully, as if weighing sincerity against pity. "I'm not anyone's project." "It's not charity," he said. "It's survival. If you have security, you'll keep wiping the floor with me. And honestly, I need that kind of motivation." A small smile tugged at the corner of her mouth. "You really think flattery's going to work?" "I'm improvising." She paused, then scribbled something on a napkin and slid it across the table. "Call this woman. She runs the nonprofit. If she says the offer's legit, we'll talk." She stood, tossed her empty cup, and walked out, leaving him staring at a 7-digit phone number that felt like the most valuable move on the board. That evening, Nathan launched phase 2 of his plan, full transparency. He met with the nonprofit director, outlined the funding, and made sure Emily would be part of the program's design from the start. No backdoor deals. No hidden strings. Only honesty. 2 days later, Emily texted, "You kept your word. I start next month. Also, your Bonko gambit is trash. See you Saturday." Nathan laughed out loud in the middle of a board meeting, startling a line of suits around the table. He didn't even care. All week, he reread that text, especially the part she didn't write, but he could feel. Trust. Late Friday night, he returned to Black Oak, locked the chess room, stared at the board where he'd first seen her. His reflection stared back from the polished surface. For the first time in years, he couldn't tell if he looked victorious or terrified. He thought of what she'd said. "Someone gave me a chance once," and wondered, Was he giving her that chance now? Or was she giving it to him? To become someone he'd never dared imagine. He turned off the lights, stepped into the night, and felt it. Something shifting. Inevitable. Like a pawn reaching the 8th rank. Would you leave your comfort zone if the person who challenged you most might also be the one who saves you? Emily's first day as program director of the Vancouver Youth Initiative's chess outreach began. The gym smelled like wood polish and hope. Golden sunlight poured through high windows as Emily arrived, an hour early. She moved quietly, laying out donated boards, labeling them with the kids' names in neat, looping letters. When Nathan walked in, balancing 2 industrial-sized coffee urns, she didn't look up. But she definitely noticed that his tie was slightly crooked, like he'd rushed to impress no one but her. By 10 a.m., the gym buzzed with new students, dozens of them. Emily stood in front of a whiteboard and began with a story. A castle, a lone pawn, a sacrifice. The kids leaned in, caught between fairy tale and strategy. And Nathan just watched, knowing without question, this was what she was made to do. The weeks that followed moved like a blitz match. Fast, focused, no wasted motion. Enrollment tripled. Local news aired a feature on the program. Donors reached out. Parents signed up. Then, one afternoon, during an interview, a reporter asked, "Would you ever return to competitive play?" Emily laughed on camera, but Nathan noticed it, a flicker in her eyes, a spark she'd taught herself to hide. That night, he emailed the British Columbia Opencom Caltech T. He paid her entry fee quietly, without asking, and left the confirmation slip folded in her staff inbox. The next morning, she stormed into his office, waving the printout. "You had no right." "I have every right," he said calmly, "to believe in you. Decline if you want, but don't pretend you don't miss the game." She turned toward the window. Vancouver Harbor shimmered in the winter light. "I don't have time to train." "You say that," he replied, "like I won't rearrange my entire life to make sure you do." He handed her a ring-bound notebook. Project Endgame. Inside, a month of prep, study guides, annotated games, sparring partners, and time blocks already cleared from his calendar. She flipped through the pages, hands trembling slightly. At the back, a handwritten note. "If you win, I'll never mention this again. If you lose, I'll still be in the front row." She finally looked at him. "I'll do it. But one condition. You enter too. No coach. No prodigy. Just student and student. Side by side." He agreed, before hesitation had a chance to surface. They trained in early morning cafes near Granville Corner and under streetlights in frozen city parks. Their breath hung like ghosts between sentences. Sometimes, Nathan won. Most times, she dismantled him. But every game ended with laughter, teasing, or the quiet thrill of a shared risk. Tournament day arrived. A converted hotel ballroom, filled with the clatter of clocks and the low hum of nerves. Nathan's first opponent resigned quickly. Emily's table drew a small crowd. Her style was precise, sharp as cut glass. By the semifinals, they stood at side-by-side boards. Nathan pushed past his only Caltex, but ultimately fell to a steady-handed international master. And strangely, he didn't care. Because just 2 feet away, Emily had led her match into the kind of complex endgame that used to keep him up at night. On move 39, her opponent sighed, tipped his king, and offered a handshake. Cameras flashed. Applause rippled through the hall. Nathan's chest tightened. Not from jealousy, but from a pride so fierce, it felt like belonging. That night, at the awards banquet, she stood tall, holding the state champion's crystal trophy. Donors hovered, plates of imported cheeses untouched. Guests mingled near silver trays and imported cheese, glasses in hand, praise on their lips. But across the banquet hall, Emily locked eyes with Nathan, and in her look, clear, steady, he saw the truth. The trophy was nice, but it wasn't the victory that mattered. She stepped off the platform, ignoring the governor's outstretched handshake, and made her way straight to Nathan. She leaned in close. "I spent years thinking sacrifice meant shrinking," she whispered. "You showed me it can mean growing, too." Nathan didn't speak. He simply laced his fingers through hers, smooth, instinctive, like a rook sliding down an open file. Then asked, softly, "Want to leave early? Go for a walk?" They strolled the Charles River under a canopy of fairy lights left over from a forgotten fall festival. The air was crisp, the path quiet, and for the first time in a long while, neither of them had anything to prove. Nathan confessed that he'd never cared about winning as much as people believed. He had just been good at it. Emily Caltected that she'd never allowed herself to dream of a life that was both brilliant and safe. As the wind swept off the river, she leaned her head gently against his shoulder. And in that moment, Nathan realized. It was the first time she had rested. Instead of holding up the world for someone else, he told her he loved her. Not in a rush, not as a play, but like a final move that made sense only after everyone before it. She answered with a quiet yes. So soft, he felt it more than heard it. And just like that, the game of their lives reached balance. No winners, no losers, only 2 players, willing to keep showing up for the next move. Now it's your move. Did this story checkmate your heart? Or did you see the twist coming from the first pawn push? Type 100 in the comments if it hit you in the feels. Tell us where in the world you're watching from. And don't forget to share this video so more people can discover how one unexpected game can rewrite every rule.